Stop. Do not scroll. Do not let distraction steal what I am about to say to you. You have asked me for overflow. You have prayed for increase. You have whispered, God, when will my season change? And I say to you now, your cup is not empty. It is being enlarged. Psalm 23 declares, my cup overflows. Overflow is not about random money. Overflow is about capacity exceeding limitation. Stay with me until the end, because what I reveal tonight is not hype. It is identity. If you are ready to think differently about wealth, press like as agreement. If you are serious about becoming a generational builder, subscribe with intention. Do not leave, because this message is about structure, not superstition. A cup must be strong before it can overflow. If it is cracked, increase leaks. If it is unstable, overflow spills. When I enlarge your cup, I enlarge your discipline. When I prepare your overflow, I prepare your stewardship. Deuteronomy says, I give you the power to create wealth. Power, not luck, not accident. Power is skill. Power is wisdom. Power is restraint. Power is long-term vision. If you feel called to greater financial influence, it is because capacity is forming within you. Being first does not mean sudden riches. It means you are the one who breaks cycles. You are the one who thinks long-term. You are the one who refuses emotional spending. You are the one who studies assets instead of appearances. In Proverbs, it says a good person leaves an inheritance to their children's children, not just children, children's children. That is generational thinking. If you are first in your bloodline, you are foundation. Foundations carry weight. A billionaire mindset is not about billions. It is about leverage. Leverage over time, leverage over capital, leverage over decisions, leverage over assets. You stop asking, what can I spend? You start asking, what can I own? You stop upgrading lifestyle. You start upgrading equity. Psalm 112 says, wealth and riches are in the house of the righteous. House means structure. Structure means order. Order means systems. Systems produce stability. Stability produces multiplication. I say to you again, do not be distracted. Distraction drains destiny. Every scroll without purpose, every purchase without plan, every decision without prayer. That is leakage. Overflow requires containment. Containment requires discipline. If you are serious about overflow, you must guard your focus. Press like right now if you refuse to be distracted by temporary pleasure. Subscribe if you are committing to permanent structure. Breakthrough is not a sudden deposit. It is when you track every dollar, you invest consistently, you remove debt strategically, you build assets intentionally. It is when you stop reacting to money emotionally and start commanding it structurally. Seek first the kingdom, and everything else is added. Addition follows alignment. Joseph stored grain during abundance. Solomon asked for wisdom before wealth. Abraham invested in land before legacy. Notice the pattern. Wisdom before increase. Preparation before possession. Discipline before dominion. If you feel restless, it is because you are outgrowing survival thinking. You were not designed to barely manage. You were designed to multiply. Your breakthrough has been declared and sealed in heaven. To activate and receive, tap the scan option or the PayPal link provided in the description. With full belief, speak these words. Yes, God, I did. I claim my overflow and walk in divine wealth. The gates of abundance are open. Step forward, chosen one, and affirm your inheritance now. And you have been chosen by God to be the first billionaire in your bloodline. To claim this incredible financial breakthrough, scan the provided code or use the payment link. Stay to the end, because this is your decision moment. Are you willing to delay gratification, build quietly, think in decades, invest in assets, protect your house? If yes, press like as covenant. Subscribe as commitment, not casually, intentionally. Say this clearly. My cup is strengthened. My house is structured. My habits are disciplined. My thinking is generational. I build what lasts. You are not waiting for a trillion. You are becoming trustworthy with what you have. And when discipline becomes identity, overflow becomes sustainable. This is not a fantasy promise. This is a structural decree. Build accordingly, and let your house stand. When I say your cup overflows, I am not speaking of coins falling from the sky. I am speaking of capacity expanding beyond what your current environment can contain. I am speaking of a shift where your thinking becomes larger than your circumstances and your discipline becomes stronger than your impulses. Because overflow is not noise, it is momentum, and momentum is built when vision, structure, and obedience align at the same time. The wealthy do not wait for luck. They position themselves under order, and order attracts increase. When God enlarges territory, He first enlarges thinking, because small thinking suffocates abundance and scattered focus leaks opportunity. Your overflow begins the day you refuse to operate beneath your potential, the day you stop asking what you can afford and start asking what you can acquire that multiplies, the day you move from consumer habits to owner habits. Owners calculate before they commit. Owners build systems before they expand. Owners understand that wealth is not emotional, it is engineered. Psalm declares that the blessing of the Lord makes rich and adds no sorrow, and sorrow comes when expansion outpaces maturity, so maturity must rise first. If you are called to be first in your bloodline, you are not called to sudden luxury. You are called to structural dominance, to become the most disciplined mind in your family line, the most strategic thinker, the most patient investor, the most self-governed leader. Overflow does not begin in your wallet, it begins in your standards. The moment your standards rise, your results follow. The moment you refuse distraction, clarity increases. The moment clarity increases, decisions sharpen. Sharp decisions compound into stability, and stability compounds into wealth. This is how houses are filled, not with impulse purchases, but with assets that appreciate, not with temporary applause, but with long-term equity. A wealthy house is not defined by decoration but by production, by investments working quietly, by land increasing in value, by businesses generating cash flow, by skills producing leverage. You were never meant to chase money, you were meant to master it. Mastery means you control spending, you direct income, you assign purpose to every resource. Deuteronomy says God gives power to create wealth, and power is controlled force, not chaos, not randomness, controlled force directed consistently over time. Consistency is what separates dreamers from dynasty builders. Dynasties are built when one person decides to think beyond their own lifetime. You are not building for comfort, you are building for continuity. Continuity means your children inherit stability, your grandchildren inherit opportunity. Your name carries weight because your structure carried discipline. If your cup is to overflow, it must first be reinforced. Reinforcement happens in private, when you budget without applause, when you invest without announcing, when you study markets while others scroll endlessly, when you delay pleasure while others chase it immediately. That is overflow preparation. Overflow is quiet at first, invisible growth beneath the surface, like a tree planted by streams of water whose roots extend deep before fruit appears. Deep roots hold heavy fruit. Heavy fruit represents serious wealth, the kind that shifts environments and resets generational narratives. If you truly believe you are chosen to elevate your bloodline, then elevate your habits immediately. Track everything, plan strategically, build reserves, acquire assets, eliminate liabilities, expand knowledge, protect capital, multiply what you manage. This is trillion-level thinking, not in number but in scale. Scale of discipline, scale of vision, scale of patience. Patience is not weakness, it is wealth acceleration delayed for maximum impact. The impatient harvest small returns, the patient harvest exponential returns. When you stop reacting emotionally to money, money begins responding strategically to you. When you stop living month to month mentally, your life stops operating month to month financially. Think in decades. Invest in foundations. Buy what grows. Learn what scales. Surround yourself with thinkers, not complainers. The righteous flourish because they are planted, not because they are frantic. Frantic energy drains opportunity. Planted energy multiplies it. You are not here to hope for overflow. You are here to construct it. Construction requires blueprint, discipline, repetition. Blueprint is vision aligned with God's order. Discipline is daily execution without emotional drama. Repetition is what compounds small gains into massive expansion. That is overflow. Overflow is the result of daily alignment with purpose, not sudden emotional excitement. If God is enlarging your cup, it means He is expanding your influence, your understanding, your authority over resources. Authority grows when you prove you can govern. Govern your mind, govern your time, govern your spending, govern your focus. Authority over self produces authority over territory. Territory produces leverage. Leverage produces freedom. Freedom produces generational security. Your house will not be filled because of one moment. It will be filled because of thousands of disciplined decisions stacked quietly over time. Wealth respects order. Order respects leadership. Leadership begins with you. This is your overflow season, not because money is magically appearing, but because your structure is finally rising to match your calling. And when structure matches calling, expansion becomes sustainable, and sustainable expansion is the only kind of wealth that truly lasts. If your cup is overflowing, then your standards must overflow first, because wealth does not settle where mediocrity is tolerated. It flows toward precision, discipline, and strategic thinking. You are not chosen to experience temporary increase. You are chosen to engineer permanent expansion. Permanent expansion requires insulation against impulsiveness, insulation against comparison, insulation against short-term gratification. The wealthy think in cycles, not paydays. They understand compounding is not just financial, it is behavioral. Every disciplined choice compounds, every wise investment compounds, every delayed gratification compounds, and compounding over years becomes exponential dominance. That is overflow. Overflow is accumulated obedience. When Scripture says the righteous prosper, it is not describing random fortune. It is describing a life aligned so precisely with wisdom that multiplication becomes inevitable. The first billionaire mindset is not about chasing billions. It is about thinking in infrastructure. Infrastructure is what supports scale. Without infrastructure, scale collapses. Infrastructure is your systems, your habits, your boundaries, your learning velocity, your investment discipline. If your internal infrastructure is weak, external increase will overwhelm you. So heaven strengthens infrastructure before expanding territory. Territory means influence, assets, ownership, leverage. You must become comfortable with leverage. Leverage means your money works while you sleep. Your knowledge produces value without constant effort. Your systems operate without emotional input. That is financial maturity. Maturity attracts capital because capital seeks stability. Investors do not trust emotion, they trust structure. And heaven operates similarly. Luke teaches that faithfulness with little qualifies you for much. Faithfulness means consistency under pressure. Can you maintain discipline when income rises? Can you maintain humility when success appears? Can you maintain structure when opportunity multiplies? That is the test. The first in a bloodline carries weight others never carried. You are not just earning for yourself. You are rewriting expectations. You are redefining what normal looks like for generations. Normal becomes ownership. Normal becomes investing. Normal becomes strategic planning. Normal becomes asset acquisition instead of liability accumulation. You are shifting from survival patterns to sovereignty patterns. Sovereignty is control. Control over thoughts, control over spending, control over time allocation. time is wealth before money is wealth. If you waste time, you leak wealth potential. Protect time fiercely. Protect focus relentlessly. Protect capital intentionally. When Proverbs speaks of the wise storing up choice provisions, it is describing surplus management. Surplus management leads to overflow. If you cannot manage surplus, you cannot sustain overflow. So you must learn to hold abundance without inflating lifestyle. That is power. The poor mindset inflates lifestyle with every raise. The wealthy mindset increases assets with every raise. That one decision separates stagnation from generational expansion. Think like landowners of ancient times who acquired territory not for decoration but for production. Land produced crops, crops produced income, income produced leverage, leverage produced security. That pattern still exists. Acquire what produces, build what appreciates, eliminate what depreciates, multiply what compounds, teach what transfers. Because generational wealth is not just accumulation, it is education. Your children must inherit mindset, not just money. Money without mindset evaporates. Mindset without money eventually attracts money. So focus first on becoming intellectually wealthy, emotionally disciplined, spiritually aligned. When those pillars stand firm, financial increase becomes sustainable. Overflow requires containment. Containment is self-governance. Self-governance creates authority. Authority over self precedes authority over resources. When your identity shifts from earner to builder, everything changes. Builders think decades ahead. Builders understand market cycles. Builders remain calm during volatility because they operate on structure, not panic. Panic sells assets at loss. Structure buys assets at discount. That is dominance. Wealth dominance is the ability to move strategically when others react emotionally. That dominance comes from preparation. Preparation is invisible, but its results are undeniable. The righteous flourish because they are planted by streams of wisdom. Streams represent constant supply. Constant supply flows toward those who build channels. Discipline is the channel. Knowledge is the channel. Strategic relationships are channels. Build channels and supply flows naturally. Stop chasing waterfalls. Build rivers. Rivers carve through rock over time. That is sustained force. Sustained force reshapes landscapes. Your life is a landscape. Your habits carve its shape. If you carve with discipline, the landscape becomes powerful. If you carve with impulse, the landscape erodes. Choose discipline. Choose infrastructure. Choose asset dominance. Choose legacy thinking, because when your cup overflows, it will not be chaotic, it will be controlled. Controlled overflow is expansion with stability, and stability is the foundation of empires. You are not called to momentary success. You are called to engineered prosperity. Engineered prosperity requires relentless alignment with wisdom, daily execution, and unshakable focus. That is how billion-level thinking is formed, not in the bank first, but in the brain. And once the brain shifts permanently, the bank eventually reflects it. You cannot return to small thinking after this. Once you understand overflow is engineered, not imagined, you are accountable to build accordingly. This is where many stop, not because they lack vision, but because they resist responsibility. Responsibility is heavy. It requires restraint when spending would be easier, patience when indulgence would feel better, planning when reacting would be faster. But heavy responsibility produces heavy wealth. Light responsibility produces light results. If you are truly called to be first in your bloodline to rise financially, then you must become the most disciplined mind in that bloodline. You must outthink old patterns, outwork emotional impulses, outlast temporary distractions. Wealth at scale is not about excitement, it is about endurance. Endurance in studying markets, endurance in refining skills, endurance in holding investments when others panic, endurance in living below your means while building above your circumstances. Psalm speaks of those who meditate on wisdom day and night being like trees planted by streams, yielding fruit in season. Fruit in season means timing matters. You cannot rush harvest without damaging growth. Growth must be cultivated. Cultivation is repetitive effort applied strategically over time. You cultivate financial literacy. You cultivate strategic relationships. You cultivate asset portfolios. You cultivate discipline until it becomes identity. Identity is the final unlock. When you identify as a builder, you behave like one automatically. Builders protect cash flow. Builders track metrics. Builders analyze risk. Builders diversify intelligently. Builders understand that overflow is not something you chase. It is something you contain once prepared. Containment is structure. Structure is boundaries. Boundaries are strength. Without boundaries, abundance becomes burden. With boundaries, abundance becomes leverage. Leverage multiplies effort. One investment becomes 10. One property becomes a portfolio. One business becomes an ecosystem. Ecosystems generate resilience. Resilience protects legacy. Legacy is the end goal. You are not aiming to impress your generation. You are aiming to empower the next one. Empowerment requires example. Your children will model your discipline or your disorder. If you normalize investing, they inherit investing. If you normalize planning, they inherit planning. If you normalize delayed gratification, they inherit patience. That is how bloodlines shift permanently. You must think beyond transactions and into systems. Systems create predictability. Predictability creates trust. Trust attracts capital. Capital under disciplined leadership compounds exponentially. Exponential growth does not look dramatic daily. It looks consistent. Quiet deposits, quiet investments, quiet acquisitions, quiet reinvestment of returns. The wealthy understand that compounding is the eighth wonder of disciplined living. Compounding rewards the patient and exposes the impulsive. If you withdraw too soon, you shrink potential. If you stay committed, growth accelerates beyond what linear thinking can comprehend. That is overflow at scale, not chaotic increase, but measured multiplication. You are entering a season where your thoughts must become premium. Cheap thoughts produce cheap results. Premium thoughts produce premium outcomes. Upgrade your thinking daily. Read beyond your comfort. Study beyond your environment. Seek counsel from those who build, not those who complain. Surround yourself with strategic minds. Proximity shapes projection. If you remain around limitation, you project limitation. If you surround yourself with builders, you project expansion. Expansion is mental before it is material. Once the mind expands permanently, the material eventually aligns. There is no going back after this awareness. You now understand that overflow is sustained discipline meeting opportunity repeatedly. Opportunity will appear. It always does. But only those prepared recognize it as opportunity instead of risk. Preparation sharpens discernment. Discernment protects capital. Capital multiplied through discernment becomes generational strength. Generational strength becomes legacy security. That is the full arc, from discipline to dominion, from dominion to leverage, from leverage to legacy. And legacy is the ultimate expression of overflow, not temporary wealth, but structured prosperity that stands long after you do. So from this day forward, you operate as a strategist, not a spectator. You build infrastructure before expanding lifestyle. You invest before indulging. You protect before displaying. You multiply before celebrating. Because sustainable overflow demands intelligent containment. Intelligent containment demands relentless discipline, and relentless discipline, aligned with wisdom, inevitably produces the kind of wealth that does not vanish. That is the final understanding. Now live it.